Hello there. Thank you for joining the RPI Consultants HCM panel today. So I'll be your host, Melissa Olson. I'm the HCM Practice Director here at RPI, and I'm excited to welcome some of our colleagues today from the HCM team. They're going to share some of the expertise that they've gathered throughout years of projects and years on the client side as practitioners in HCM and HR and payroll. And, I really want to thank them for taking time out of their day and out of their client work to come join us today and talk about some topics that, we've been seeing come out of project implementations or commonly asked questions that clients have. So if you have any questions as we're going through our topics today, please just type your question in the On24 box there and submit, and we'll answer them at the end of, toward the end of our video or project today, or our talk today. So I want to kind of introduce the panel. Let's go ahead and get started with Matt.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Slazak. I'm a senior HCM consultant with RPI. Been here for about 4 years or so by now, but been consulting for probably around 7 or so. Prior to that, I worked in HR in various capacities for about 16 years as an HR practitioner. So I've been through basically just about every part of HR we can think about. So been out there for a while, and been working with Lawson ever since the start of my HR career. So going back about 20 years now or so, yeah, so been through a lot with S3 and GHR, a lot of implementations, a lot of re-implementations, a lot of upgrades along the way. So happy to be here.
Great, thank you, Matt. How about Miranda?
Hi, everybody. My name is Miranda Heisey. I'm a senior business analyst, and I've been with RPI for a little over 2 years now. I've mostly worked in CloudSuite, but I also have done some work in Lawson, and most recently, I've been working a lot in talent management. So I've been working with goals, performance management, talent acquisition, talent management, and I've also had my hand in GHR as well. And I think we're also sharing something fun about us too. So I wanted to share that during COVID and quarantine, we got a puppy. His name is Atlas, and I've wanted a dog for years now, probably for like the past 10 years. So I'm just really super happy to have him and brag about him every chance that I get. So.
And maybe we'll get a little cameo in the next hour, because I know I've seen him show up in some of our meetings other times. So
yeah, okay.
Thanks, Miranda. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Beitendorf, and I am also a senior HCM consultant. I have been in the consulting world for about 24 years. I've been with RPI for about 2 years, and I am specializing right now in V11 payroll. I have a client that we are taking live right now. We just went live with HR and benefits, and we go live with payroll on the 12th. So it has been a fun and interesting month getting ready for go live. And so also, like Miranda, during quarantine, I got a puppy as well. I have a tiny toy poodle, and she is about 2.3 pounds. So, and she is the love of my life, and she's a spitfire and keeps me busy after work.
She is adorable, little Lily. Good luck. I know you guys did just go live, so you've got a payroll to run in about a week. So I wish you lots of luck with that. And again, thank you for taking time out of your cutover go live time to help us join in on this panel. And Carolyn.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Cox. I too am a senior HCM consultant at RPI. I've implemented the S3, and I've been working with Kathy on implementing version 11. So I have been in payroll for over 30 years, and I've done practically everything you can do in payroll. And as Kathy likes to tease me, I am a payroll geek. I love payroll taxes. I love taxable and non-taxable compensation. And I guess that's the funny thing about me. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Carolyn. Okay, so we're going to hit a few topics today. We're going to kind of start out with some core HCM, GHR topics that we've been hearing from clients, or some things that kind of cause a little noise around implementations. And then we'll hit some B11 payroll. I think everybody's excited to hear how that and what the product's like, what the user experience is like. As Kathy was just saying, we're going live we are live with them right now during their payroll period, and we're going to be running payroll with that client in a week. So, there is a lot of experience between Carolyn and Kathy in that product and the growing pains of using that product. So we'll explore a little of that. And then we've got some topics around talent acquisition and around continuous performance that we'll hit. So some new and exciting things in the talent management space. So we hope you stick around to hear everything. Just wanted to give you a quick little agenda. So let's go ahead and get started with span of control. So I've heard that there's like this notion of span of control, and it comes up a lot from a lot of our teams on these projects. So Matt, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So something that's come up many times, especially as people go into the talent management world, is they're very used to looking at direct reports, and that's pretty much it. Or maybe they're descendants. So I have a subordinate who is a manager, and I want to see, all of the people underneath them. But then when it comes to something like, I want to request a transfer, I want to request a new position, a lot of times those select lists are pretty much wide open. It's kind of the Wild West out there, and you will see every single position or job that's in your org unit, or anything that reports to anybody within the organization. And Info recently has rolled out this concept of span of control. It's a configuration that we've had to do many times, but now they've actually kind of baked it into the product. So now we can actually go and look at, have those lists filtered down automatically to positions that report to me, or they report to other people who are like me. So maybe a same supervisor in the same organization unit, or even positions that report to one of my subordinates. So those lists can start to be filtered down automatically and kind of have this span of control just baked right into the product. Kind of a subset of that is they've supplemented the audits that can be run about supervisors. So there's now some audits that I know a lot of clients have kind of built through IPA, or they've just been running kind of quick reports in through add-ins, or not add-ins, through Spreadsheet Designer, to look at their supervisor codes and finding anybody who, maybe there's a supervisor code that has multiple people in it, so multiple resources filling that role, or the other side of it is, you might have no staff reporting to a supervisor code, or a individual person who reports to a supervisor code that's vacant. So those have kind of been built into the system. So they've done a lot of nice things to kind of tie that all together and kind of pre-deliver a lot of that instead of having to make a lot of configurations on that.
That's really nice to hear, because I know you guys have been talking about that with a lot of your clients, and it naturally comes up in those conversations. So it's nice that a lot of the enhancements that the user community has kind of asked for throughout the years is finally coming to fruition here. I think, again, when you're talking through those design discussions, you get your structure, your org structure, and the important design decisions, but a lot of that is also usability and the user experience. So, some of the bigger decisions, or maybe decisions that take a little bit longer because there has to be consensus around email templates. So Matt and Miranda, do you want to kind of talk through your experience and guidance that you've given clients when you set those up and bring those online?
Sure. I'll start with it, and then Miranda, feel free to, I'll hand it off to you there too and chime in. There have been a lot of email templates that are kind of baked into the system, a lot of notification templates that are out there, but there's always been a little bit of a limitation on the look and feel of them. A lot of times they were very text-based. And even though you could do some things with some rich text formatting, it wasn't necessarily the prettiest email that you could get out. Or worse yet, you would send it, and for all you knew, if you were an employee who wasn't used to getting these notifications, you'd get an email and there was no branding on it. There were no colors on it. There was no logo on it. So they've supplemented that out now so we can actually start to add those pieces in, as well as doing some more text variable replacement. So Miranda, do you want to talk about that a little bit further? Or?
Sure. So I'm actually working with a client right now, and we've been talking about email templates a lot. And one of the big worries is that if an email is set up on an automation, that they're not able to edit that email, and that the email won't have all of the information that they need. And just one big piece of advice, I guess, for email templates is that they can be modified to include a lot of different fields in the system, even if they're not in that general text variable list that you would typically have on your email template. There are ways to get around that and pull fields from a lot of different business classes. So you could really essentially have any field that you want on an email template, which is really neat.
Yes, that is really, really nice, because you do think especially I think clients that take a lot of these pieces on themselves, or maintain that afterward, think they're limited by that variable list, or, once it's set, that's it. It's not easy to change. So I think, getting that, ensuring that your partner gives you all the information around, setting those up and documentation to change them, and what all the options are.
There's a certain amount of prettiness that you want to work into the system. So, the more we can do to make that really feel comfortable for employees, the better, really.
Really, it's 2021. We're used to an online user experience in our outside of work lives. So when we get into work, you don't want to see, we lived with Lawson, which was a great system for an HR database, a great system for batch processing, but it didn't give you that usability that you're used to when you're on web pages. And, I think the new Lawson product has the foundation for that. Out of the box, it's not going to be there. And you guys are helping clients kind of open up their minds to be able to see and feel products coming out or deliverables coming out of the system to be more like what we're used to in our day-to-day lives. So I don't have a lot of stuff to talk about rebuild maintenance, so I'll just kind of turn it over to you, Matt. This is another topic that has been coming up with, your general HCM projects.
Right. So the rebuild maintenance that's out there, especially if you've been live on talent management for a while, or you've been doing GHR for a long time, the place where it usually rears its ugly head is if you're looking at employer manager space and you're looking at somebody's work assignment and you want to see who that supervisor is. So you know that they report to supervisor 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know that recently we moved Melissa into that supervisor code. But if you looked at employer manager space, you might not see her name there. Or worse yet, Melissa might log into the system and go to manager space and wants to see all of her people underneath her, but she doesn't necessarily see them right away. So they've made a lot of improvements, and they've broken out a lot of that into a separate section, which is just called out as rebuild maintenance. So it's no longer something where you just run a generic update keywords. And sometimes, a lot of times in the documentation, it tells you, only run this if Infor tells you to run this. So people kind of are skittish about running it. Quite frankly, I wouldn't blame them. But, that's the kind of thing where you would want to run that, on a somewhat frequent basis. But now they've actually called that out, and it's no longer as scary because it's actually called out in your areas for administration to just say, you know what, let's run the rebuild maintenance on this. It's smoothed out a lot. It doesn't clog up your async queue as much as it used to. It's a lot more efficient, and it's updating more of those keywords in a much more efficient manner. So especially if you run into that on a daily basis, or however often, some people will only run it maybe bi-weekly whenever we're processing payroll, or just after we've processed all those changes. But now it's a centralized location. It runs a lot more efficiently, and it makes your system kind of breathe a little bit easier on that. So.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. I think you might be relieved of your duties till a little bit later in the panel. So we're going to move into some talent management topics. So Miranda, we've had performance and goals management for years now. A new kind of theme or trend in human resources is the topic of continuous performance, and not just doing it like an annualized performance review. In the last year, I understand that Infor has come out with some support to a continuous performance model. So do you want to talk to the team and to all the people out there about what you've experienced with continuous performance?
Yeah, so continuous performance, it can also be considered as employee engagement, and I'm just going to kind of give like an overview of what it is, because it is so new and a lot of people haven't experienced it before, and there really haven't been a lot of people who've implemented yet, but I do think that it could really benefit an organization, because a lot of people are moving away from just that annual performance review, and they're trying to check in with their employees on a more frequent basis. I know that every job that I've had like at least a weekly check-in with my manager, and this module allows you to track that information. So continuous performance, it includes a few different things. One of the things is check-ins, which I just mentioned. It allows you to meet with your employees on a more frequent basis. And when you meet with them, there's different things that you could either assign to them. So you could have tasks or accomplishments. You could talk about anything that the employee has accomplished during that week, or since the last time that you've spoken to them. You could assign them any tasks that you might want them to complete before the next time that you meet with them. And you can also talk about any hurdles that the employee is experiencing. So maybe there's an issue with their laptop, it keeps shutting down on them, and it's really hurting their day-to-day work. So you want to make sure that that employee gets a new laptop or some other hurdle. And all of these things can be pulled into the performance evaluation, so that when you do have your annual performance evaluation, you can have a really good record of what that employee has accomplished and things that you've talked about throughout the entire year. Instead of, I mean, some people might keep track of those things offline and outside of a system, or some people, if they were like me in a previous job, when I had an annual performance, I would kind of sit down and try to remember everything that I accomplished during the year, any big conversations that I had with my manager, and that's really hard to do. So this allows you to track that throughout the year. And even if you don't want to pull that information into your performance evaluations, you could still have it there, and then the employee or the manager can print it out and bring it to the evaluation with them so that you have some talking points. So that's one of the main parts of continuous performance. There's also raves. So this would be something like a shout out or a high five. It allows employees to submit a rave for their peers. So if somebody did something really great and the peer wants to recognize them for that, they can go ahead and do that right in the system, and then it's there for that employee to see, and their manager can see it. This could be pulled into the performance evaluation as well. And one of the last things that's in continuous performance are recognition programs and nomination programs. So if you have any programs where you're recognizing employees, maybe for their years of service, or you have an employee of the month, or maybe you give out gift cards for some sort of recognition, this allows you to track that information in the system. And you can also do other things with this as well. You can set up automatic emails. We were kind of talking about the email templates earlier. If you need to send the manager or somebody in the HR department a reminder about something. And you can also set up certification templates. So if you have someone who's assigned to print out and manually create those certification templates, the system would allow you to upload a template, and then anytime that somebody receives that recognition, then that little certificate could be created automatically, and you could print it out, or the manager can print it out, so you don't have to worry about mailing it to them or anything like that. So yeah, there's kind of a lot involved, but it sounds like, but it is a pretty simple module to set up, and it's really great to keep track of that information throughout the year.
So is it part of the performance management module, or is it something separate that users would find in another area for security and for under the administration?
It has a separate security role. So if you do have continuous performance, you would have to assign the employee engagement security role to those users so that they could set up that information on the back end.
Thanks, Miranda. Okay, we're going to delve into some B11 payroll now. So, Kathy, you've been deep in conversions over the last couple of weeks before you guys went live. You know, this is a thing that comes up with any payroll implementation, whether it's B11 or, you know, S3, which is, you know, if you're not going live 1-1, you're going to need to deal with history. You'll probably still need to deal with history for potentially other things in the system, for, you know, any kind of benefits or contributions and things. So talk to us about what payroll history, is it easier to load? Is it what for B11, what do you want to enrich, you know, our audience with when they're dealing with this or thinking about this to go for a B11 implementation?
Sure. So the payroll history in B11, the template looks very familiar to the S3, with the exception you have to have a header record. So you have 3 different records. So you have a header record, which is record 1, you have the record 2, which is your wage record, and you have the record 3, which is your deduction record. But otherwise the detail looks pretty much the same. The one big gotcha that got us is your benefit deductions all have to be what we call, which probably most of you call, the Z deductions, because benefits cannot be tied to the same deduction code as your benefit deductions. They have to be an other deduction, so they cannot be tied to the benefit type. So they still have to contain for your section 125s, your tax location, and be classified as a section 125, but they cannot be classified as a benefit deduction. But the one thing that is very nice is once you SFTP the file over to the server and you import the deductions in, or not the deductions, of the checks in, you're able to make corrections to the file instead of having to purge everything out and reload all the time. So if you noticed that you had something going to a wrong pay code or a wrong deduction code, you can open up the import file and change it directly within the system rather than having to purge everything out and reload it all again like you had to do within S3. You do all of your balancing before you actually load the files into the system. So everything stays into the payroll import file, and you balance it all before you actually load the checks into the system. Once they're loaded, it's all done, your balancing is done, everything is completely finished at that point in time. So the only time you would load your file and then you balance it, the only time you have to purge out is if for some reason it doesn't balance and you need a whole new file. Otherwise, you can just update the file online. You can make any changes that you need to make changes to the system. And that goes with any of the files for payroll that you're loading or any of the conversion files. You can make changes directly in the import files before you actually load them into the system. So not like S3 to where you can't, once you load them.
It's done. You either refresh, I mean, you wipe everything. That's your only shot if you need to fix it. Yeah.
Right, right. And the conversions, as long as you have access to SFTP to load the file to the server, I did all the conversions being an HCM person for production rather than having a technical person involved. So when HR or payroll and benefits gave me the files, I did them all myself because I had access to the server, to the SFTP.
So then it sounds yeah, it sounds like it makes it easy for people or organizations that might have acquisitions, which we're finding a lot of our healthcare organizations are bringing in new entities annually or relatively often. Having that flexibility in the department seems to be, it's a lighter load on the IS team or IT team, and it gives a lot more control, it sounds like, to the HR and the payroll personnel.
Absolutely. As long as, they set me up with the SFTP, in FileZilla, I'm able to transfer my files, and then I took it from there, and I actually taught their payroll admin, and she's the one who loaded the payroll conversions this time around in production. And so I just did the transferring of the data, and she took it from there, and she did her own payroll conversions, which was a huge load off my shoulders. And she took care of it.
That sounds, it's a huge load off your shoulders, which translates to, you out there as clients and, what the hours that you're expecting to have to pay for consulting help. Conversions are always rolled into that. And the more you can start taking that on and feel confident in that, that helps kind of lower that cost of entry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, the payroll conversions went very, very slick, once we got down, the process and understood, the mapping of everything. We didn't have any problems at all with the payroll conversions, and which normally that's a big fight, getting in. We didn't have any problems at all.
It's amazing to hear. Thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
So staying on the payroll topic, a lot of you on the phone today or on our webinar today will be on S3. You're used to the look and the feel, and you can probably do that in your sleep. Those jobs better than the back of your own hand, most likely. So Carolyn, kind of talk to us about that user feel and the design of the new payroll system, and what you may like better and what you may like better in the S3 side, because maybe there are things that are better on that side. If you can give us kind of a honest opinion and take on that design.
Well, everything I have to say is to get everybody on S3 that is on S3 excited about version 11, because if you input an employee number, and I know everyone does this, even if you're in S3, you hit enter. Well, in S3, you have to hit the inquire button. Well, in version 11, when you input the employee number and you hit enter, the employee comes up for you. So that is exciting news. And it's not going to take much for everybody to change from the S3 world over to version 11, because you're doing it already in S3 by accident. So that is a great feel. Something else that I'm excited about is memorizing the forms in S3 and knowing which PR screen or LP screen I need to go, or HR screen I need to go to, and the number. Well, in version 11, you have a menu to the left. You can change your responsibilities, and you can go through the menu on the left to get where you need to go, and you don't have to memorize any form names or numbers. So that's very exciting to me. Let's see. The other thing that I was very excited about was that when you're actually processing the payroll, you could go to one screen and be able to lock your payroll. You can process your, and I was about to call it by the form name, your FLSA overtime calculation, and you can process your payroll, and you can close it all from the same screen. And if you process your payroll and you have an employee that you can, first of all, you can lock your payroll. That's exciting news. So nobody can change anything while you're processing the payroll. It'll lock them out until you're finished. But if you have an employee that was in error or a last minute change came up for them and you haven't finalized your process, you can unlock that one employee, make the change for them, lock them back, and reprocess your payroll. So that's very exciting to me. Like I said, payroll geek. So let's see. Anything else that I'm missing, Kathy?
No. It's something that
I mean, it sounds big. I mean, you said a few words, but having everything in one menu to access easily and not flipping between 100 screens sounds like a huge efficiency, time efficiency also.
Yes.
How about in reporting? Are you finding it easier to do any kind of audits or pull any reporting that in the S3 world has to either be kind of customized or filtered and sorted and moved over to a spreadsheet to actually get anything out of? And this is to both of you guys.
Well, I can say helping Kathy on the version 11 implementation, it was very easy when she would ask me, can you pull this information? I would just go in and export to CSV, and I had everything that I needed. Kathy?
Yeah, and I think you missed it when we had Aaron on, and we just got Burst enabled, and that's where the check register is located. So after payroll closes, the check register is in Burst, and he also demoed, because they have Burst now as well, the standard reports that are in Burst for payroll, because that just came out in August, I think it was. And Burst is very slick with what it can do and drill down to get reporting and to send out reports by the supervisor, by the org unit, and schedule them if they get a report how they can schedule to always send that report out bi-weekly or whatever your payroll is. So that can be scheduled to send out automatically to this group of people by pay schedule to this group of people. So
Nice.
first will be very handy as well.
Yeah, because I know how much payroll, relies upon reporting. It is, you have to be down to the cent, and a lot of the audits that payroll does, you can't go live without something that your organization feels comfortable that they're able to see everything they need to. So having a tool like Burst where you're able to kind of slice and dice the data the way you need to and show it in a format to the people who need to see it sounds a lot nicer than some of our lost and delivered reports that you only had about 5 fields that you could manipulate and get data back, and you're doing some VLOOKUPs and maybe HR Writer data dumps and stuff to get what you need.
Yes, HR Writer has gone away.
I mean, I know that's scary for a lot of you guys out there because it was a very easy tool to just get everything you need and create. But, in the new day, you want to be able to write exactly what you want and for it to update with those fields and not have to spend, an hour manipulating everything to get it into the format you need it. So that in itself is a sell. So, Kathy, talk to us a little bit about payroll corrections. I know that's also another time-consuming thing that happens all the time. How does that compare in the new system, or in V11?
Payroll corrections are very simple as well. So, you go in and you make an adjustment. So it's just like cutting a check, manual checks as well, or you follow through and put the time record in. And so the adjustment is pretty much the same thing. And both of them you can process with the payroll, you can process outside the payroll. So it's very simple, very easy, easier than it was in S3 process. The same thing, I'll chirp off into another topic. The same thing with absence management, because we took a turn within a month of our go live, and I had to quickly implement absence management. And absence management was very simple of an implementation, very straightforward, just like absence management was in S3 as far as building. So when you built it, all of the plans and the rules and everything was all right there. And it took me uninterrupted, probably 2 days to build 3 plans, to get all the information gathered and built and tested for a personal day, a PTO day, and a sick plan. And that would be broken out with police and fire and a city, all the others for the city group. So very simple, straightforward plans, a lot like S3. And then you can run that completely, depending how you're running it. It can be run completely outside of payroll because their plan is not impacted by payroll except for the decrements of the plan, because they get it no matter what. So it doesn't rely on hours to give them their accruals. They just get a monthly accrual. So HR could run it and be completely outside of payroll if they wanted. So.
Sounds nice. And I mean, I think, that's been the guidance that most as RPI and I believe other Infor partners and Infor has kind of been giving is, keep your absence with your payroll. So, we're talking a lot about the payroll today, but most likely if that's the only thing left on S3 for your HR apps, you'll be bringing absence management up along with your payroll if that is the product that you use in S3 and not a time and attendance system. So
yes, yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. Maybe we'll get some more questions around that. I wanted to leave a little bit more time for some talent acquisition, but I think we can also do a whole topic after you guys are live for a little while, a whole discussion on living with payroll V11 and absence V11, and the time and attendance talk to and all of that in the future, because I think everybody will be very interested. I know I'm interested in hearing all the updates that your client has been feeling and living with and concerned about, and what does it look like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months down the line. So maybe we can set up another session then, so everybody else can kind of hear what it's like to be living on the V11, all V11 HCM apps.
See if I'm still upright.
You will. You'll have some sleep, and then hopefully you can remember everything after you sleep.
That's right.
Yeah. So thank you, Kathy and Carolyn. So we're going to head back to Matt and Miranda, and TA, talent acquisition, has been a constantly evolving module and product in the last 18 months or so, and there's still a few updates left that are going to be coming out in the next month or two and over the summer. So I'm just going to open this kind of up to you guys to kind of talk about what you've been experiencing, the things that you've seen that are upgrades, the things that you're maybe still waiting on, or your clients are still having to configure heavily. I'll just kind of leave it up to you guys to talk about what you want with this new TA, or the continuous performance of TA.
Yes, it's an evolution, definitely. So, if you haven't looked at talent acquisition over the past, couple of years, like Melissa said, it's changed almost like right down to its core. So the old boxes that you used to have to check and everything, they're kind of gone. And you're going to see a new look and feel with things like panel views for your recruiters and managers. And how you look at an application has changed. And there's now integrated resume parsing, which is kind of beautiful, and it's no longer like sending it out to telemetry and then waiting for an interface to come back or anything. So that's kind of built out, right in its core. But one of the really good things that's come up, and I know that we've probably, with all the talent acquisition projects I've been on, one of the first questions that people ask is, well, wait a second, like, what are the steps to hire somebody? And, Infor came out and said, these are the, 7 or 8 steps that always, every single candidate has to go through all these. Now that has been completely changed. So there's now a configurable hiring workflow. So if you have a process where you only have people go through like 5 steps before they're hired, we can build that out now. Or, I was working with a client recently, and there are basically 5 steps in 5 different places where they want to see the offer going, so that they can see exactly, and allow their hiring managers to see as well, how is the actual process of hiring this person and making an offer to them going. So we can see all that in individual steps. The other nice thing about this is you can have different flows for different kinds of requisitions. So if you have like a physician recruitment group, and that's different than your regular general population of requisitions, we can have 2 different workflows entirely for them. The neat thing about those workflows as well is, recruiters right now are very used to looking at a requisition and going through and working rec by rec. But let's just say you have a recruiter who would rather work on, okay, let me see all of my all of the requisitions and all the people who are sitting in hiring manager review. so you can work through the workflows instead. There's nice functionality with that, even with quick movement actions. So if you want to just move somebody to I know we're not going to use this person, there's a button right there on the candidate card view and the job application card view. So it's a very nice quick action. There's some capabilities with dragging and dropping candidates between one step to another. A lot more automations that are built out on it, a lot more action ability inside there. Like if we know that when we move this to a certain step, kick off the screening. You know, I want to send that to my background check vendor. That can be built in pretty easily. Some of the newer stuff, and I know I know Miranda and I have talked about this quite a bit lately, is there's now the ability, just within the past, I think it's within the past two updates, where we can now have multiple positions on a single requisition. So think about like your evergreen requisitions or your sourcing requisitions. So, you know, I'll lean on healthcare again, but we know that we just will always hire a nurse because there's a shortage. We want to get these people. You don't want to have the nurses apply to 15 different requisitions. Instead, they just apply to this one single RN position. And now we can have multiple positions on that single requisition. So when we hire them, we're actually just going to choose one of those requisition or one of those positions that's on the rec and move them right into that instead of having to move them to a separate requisition, disposition them from the first one, and then move them through the process. I know that people are really excited about that. That's something that's very, very new. And then, you know, something I know, I don't want to steal your thunder on this, Miranda, if you've got another, like some fun functionality that's currently out there on TA. I might have stepped right on your toes there, so I apologize.
No, you're fine. Were you going to mention something else now, or?
No, if you want to chime in on that one, and then sure. We can talk about some of the preview of coming events, I guess, too.
Yeah. So something else that's pretty new within the past year or so is the configurable job application. So the configurable job app allows you to set up tasks pretty similar to transition management if you're familiar with the transition management module for that job application. And it also allows you to have multiple job applications for your organization. So you might have positions that are just completely different from what your sort of standard application would be that you want applicants to fill out. You can set up an entirely different job application process for that. And then your recruiters could go in and select what the appropriate application would be for that requisition. Something that's really great about the configurable job app is that you can set up automations on it. So if you need to send, let's say, an additional task to a candidate, if they're at a certain point in the hiring workflow, then you could do that. So if you wanted to send maybe personal information task and gather their social security number, address, things like that, and you needed to gather that before they go into pre-boarding or an onboarding program, you can kick that off before that happens and gather that information much earlier. And then you could also assign tasks to candidates really whenever as an additional task. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it kind of goes part and parcel with that, with the configurable workflow. You know, why should recruiters have all the fun? You know, let's let our candidates have a better experience on it too. So. Mm-hmm. So I think one thing, you know, as we're kind of looking out forward as well, it's the things that aren't fixed yet, but we know is on their roadmap. Probably one of the big things that any talent acquisition customer would talk about right now is that blasted candidate space zip file. That one is still there right now, but it is on their roadmap to get rid of that soon. And I can't, don't quote me on a date or anything out like that, because, I'm sure that there might be some movement on those dates. But the plan is for them to move all of those configurations for candidate space into Configuration Console. And then we can get rid of that dang candidate space zip file. So
I have heard from Infor twice in the last week that it will be there by April, that it would hit pre-prod by March, and that by April it will be there. Again, don't quote us on this, but I am quoting Infor and what I heard last week from their product management team.
If that's the case, I will be a very, very happy boy. I'm sure that, Miranda, you'll be incredibly happy as well at that point.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. And then there's another thing that's coming up. There's always been the question about like interview scheduling and integrating that with like Outlook, things like that. They are working on that with, they're working on partnering with a third-party company to kind of integrate that as well, so that will be more of a, you know, send something out to the candidate and pick like 1 or 2 times that would work for you, so that you can kind of get that integrated inside there. So again, TBA in terms of when that comes out, but that is that's another future-looking piece that's coming out soon.
It's a lot. It really is, and it is exciting. But I think, you know, some of the things that you guys have been dealing with is, do we start? Do we wait? Do we start? Do we wait? And, you know, at this point, if clients are out there are trying to make this decision, what would you tell them?
Personally, right now,
there, but I think that's what they're all wondering.
No, and so in the past, you know, if you asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said, nah, just wait as long as you can. But, you know, we can do it, but here's going to be the limitations. Right now, it would be an unfiltered, yeah, go for it. Because you're going to gain a lot more flexibility than you had before. And there's really good stuff that's baked into the system now. So, yep.
Matt approved that stamp, yeah. And it's good to know, though, you know, because like you said, you know, these changes are going to be coming out. But if anybody starts a project in the next couple of months, those changes will be there before they're going live, and hopefully, you know, before they start testing. Miranda and I are on a project right now that it's going to be really close. You know, we're waiting for that candidate file to change, and that's lined up right before we're supposed to go into unit test. So, you know, we're trying to dance around a bit and do everything that we can to prepare for it. But I think that's kind of the only caveat there is, you know, it'll be there by the time you go live, but when you're in testing, just, I guess, be mindful of the changes that you make and not put too much effort into the zip file or anything else that you may be changing down the road.
Yeah, I think we're kind of over the hump in terms of the major overhaul of TA. So now it's becoming like the core pieces are becoming more stable, or not stable, but, you know, they're more mainstream and we're used to them. Those aren't being tweaked as much. Now it's just kind of getting these last pieces in. So.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Are there any kind of last thoughts that as we've been talking, you were like, oh, I wish I brought this up before we open it up? Hey, sounds like we got lots of stuff we wanted to cover. So with that, we'll open it up to you guys. You know, questions have been coming in. We're going to get to those right now, or if you've been holding off and waiting till you hear everything, go ahead and submit your questions.
Okay, our first question is from Joseph. He is asking, regarding email templates and branding, any advice on including images, like image files need to be on a server that can be accessed by the user's email outside of the Infor server?
Yeah, so the best way to do it is there's a link inside the template for the image URL. So it is ideal if you can have that sitting outside on your web server somewhere. A lot of times, you know, most corporate websites will have an image file or an image folder sitting out on the web server, which you can access. So you can point to that. There's a couple different places where you can upload images into the system and try to call them out. but they're not used widely across all of GHR. So, usually I would just stick for the moment with that image URL, and then we can work on embedding them further later on as well.
Thanks, Matt. From Joe, has Infor developed a program or an IPA to assist with building the payroll conversion file?
Currently, Infor provides the templates. I'm not aware of them providing any program or IPA at this time.
Okay, but there is a template file. Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Next up, are there any other modules in GHR or talent management that continuous performance is integrated with?
Yeah, so out of the box, I've seen 3 places where this is integrated so far. The performance module is really the biggest one. So you can kind of pick and choose what you'd like to show up in the performance evaluation if you are using that. Goals is integrated with continuous performance. So on the check-in dashboard for employees and managers, there's a goals widget, and if the employee has any goals assigned to them, then they would pull into that list there. Having that list in check-ins is kind of helpful in case any of your check-in conversations have to do with goals that the employee is working on. And pieces of the continuous performance module do integrate with the employee record in GHR. There's a tab on the employee profile that's called employee recognition. So any recognitions that the employee has received or any awards or nominations they've received will pull right into their employee record, and they'll be able to view them on their profile.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Miranda. I was on mute there. So it looks like that's the last question that we have today. I really want to thank everybody who joined us today and taken an hour out of your day to listen on some of the day in the life of GHR and payroll. So if you have any other questions, please go to rpic.com and chat with us there. The questions will make their way back to this HCM panel. And with that, have a wonderful day. Thank you all.